Well, we're going live on this beautiful December 7th here in let's see, what's the temperature outside? It's still above freezing. It's 43 with 36% humidity. Barometer is a little bit low and staying a little bit low. I think we're supposed to be getting some weather in tomorrow. It was certainly beautiful today and beautiful yesterday. Let's see, we've got quite a few people already checked in. Optical Man Jeff, KE0OG, from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where it's 44 degrees and clear. Leo Gustafson. Hi, Jeff and Trey, visiting from Albany, Oregon, 54 and scattered showers following an atmospheric river. We've been watching on television. Of course, what they do on TV is they take the river that's the fullest and most out of control, and that's what they show, and say, well, this is representative of everything, you know. And so we're horrified by what we see, but we hope that you're getting some much needed moisture and snow up there. And I imagine Southern California is looking for a way to swipe it. So anyway, we have had some snow here. Sunday we had some snow, a couple inches. And it's been good weather. I mean, you know, this is the December. It's warm one day, cold the next, warm one day, cold the next. And of course, now that we're into December, we're getting ever closer to the winter solstice, which is somewhere in the vicinity of the 21st, although I don't think it's actually on the 21st. But that will be the time when the Earth's rotational pole is tipped furthest from the sun. What a lot of people don't understand is that the winter solstice is not a day. It's a moment in time of zero length. It just happens to be because you've got the tilt of the Earth's axis and it's gradually sweeping across. And at the very moment where it crosses perpendicular, that's the winter solstice. And so prior to that is fall, post that is winter. Although, shoot, you know, I think whoever defined the seasons as starting with the solstices and equinoxes did not take into account weather reality, because it's still technically fall here, but there are no colored leaves and there is still some snow on the ground. So let's see. Glenn Martin, hello from far west Missouri, 52, 50% relative humidity, sounds good. Very nice day for early December in northern Missouri, and 0 QFT. Whoops. Glenn Martin, let's see. Hope all had a good Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. Today is Pearl Harbor Day, and on 1941, December 2nd, there was a Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor that succeeded brilliantly from a tactical point of view. They sent in a whole bunch of aircraft. The aircraft were picked up by Navy radar, and the aircraft just created havoc among the big battle cruisers, sank a lot of them, some irrecoverably. The Arizona just settled straight to the bottom. If you send a drone overhead or something, you can actually see the ship under the water. For many, many decades, it was leaking oil. And I think they finally found the hole and plugged it, because it was, you know, making an environmental mess of everything near it. But there is a memorial on the Arizona, and every year they take some of the rapidly dwindling number of veterans who were there. We're probably down now to less than 5. who survived Pearl Harbor, who were there, and bring them there for the remembrance. Now, I mentioned that the Navy radar did see them. That was not the problem. They did see them. They had warning. They knew what it was. And the problem was the command and control. I mean, the people at the radar site frantically tried to call the main base in Pearl Harbor and say aircraft were on the way. But some idiot said, oh, that's just bombers coming in from San Francisco. And, you know, this radar stuff is too new to rely on, so we won't. And as a result, there was a major catastrophe. Now, there probably would have been a major catastrophe anyway, but if we'd had proper warning, we could at least have gotten the aircraft off the ground and given a little bit of a fight. I mean, it was a massive Japanese air assault. So two things failed. One, intelligence. Two, command and control. Now, command and control for most of World War II was done the traditional way, where you go up the ranks till somebody was interested and made a decision, and that would come down the ranks. And there really wasn't a separate command and control network. And ships didn't have fire control centers and stuff like that like they do today. The thing that changed that was the USS Pueblo. It was a U.S. Navy ship performing an NSA mission off the coast of North Korea. And the North Koreans, in a very daring raid, went out into international waters, captured the ship. The commander, Buchert, took a lot of gas for letting them take the ship because there was a lot of secret stuff on board. And he didn't scuttle the ship either. Could have done that. But anyway, the problem there was they tried frantically to get some help, and none was forthcoming because these telegrams were sitting in inboxes in various commanders' desks, and nothing was being done about them. So after that, the entire military and Department of Defense, along with various other government agencies in the intelligence community, really undertook an enormous, still ongoing project to improve command and control. Command means giving instructions, control means getting feedback. And so the brass know what they're doing. But the idea was to create a kind of a separate-ish, parallel to the command structure, incident command post kind of thing. So at that point, if the Pueblo was under attack, minutes later, a bomber and fighter could take off from Okinawa and head in that direction. They'd be in the air in minutes. That was impossible back then. And that's what happened in Pearl Harbor. I mean, they could have at least got the aircraft off the ground. The big battleships were not in a combat posture. Many of them, their boilers were cold. And it takes hours to raise steam on a big ship like that. So from the top of Oahu down to Pearl Harbor, the radar was at the top, would not have been enough, the flying time would not have been enough for these ships to have gained steam. But ideally, a warning from the radar could have had the aircraft off the ground and the ships in battle posture, with people actually manning the anti-aircraft guns and stuff like that, okay? But the problem was people didn't trust radar, they didn't know anything about it. This is the same thing that happened in the first Desert Storm. We take GPS for granted now, but back at that time, 1991 or so on, it was an Air Force program that had been transferred from the Navy, so it was an orphan program to boot, and nobody trusted it. Some admirals out at sea said, "Where are we?" to the GPS guy, and they said, "Well, we're 120 feet below sea level." And the problem is that GPS has this geoid view of the Earth that's smooth. And so it's very possible that it would indicate 120 feet below sea level because gravity varies enormously all around the world. And so it sucks water down heavier in certain places and it pops up in others. So what the GPS was telling this ship was exactly correct, and it had to be converted to the local datum. So the Navy didn't like it, the Army didn't like it. And so what happened was parents of soldiers would go to their local sporting goods store and spend hundreds of dollars on one of those early GPS units, and they mailed them to their kids. And it made a huge difference, as these Army people were out in the trackless wastes of southern Iraq, and they were able to know exactly where they were. And the brass took notice, and now GPS, of course, is integral to everything. Also integral to civilian aviation the world around. And in fact, as a sport pilot, I was never even instructed on how to use the old-fashioned VOR, the VHF Omni range, and just told GPS. Now, private pilots still need to undergo the other, and the old system still acts as a backup in case GPS gets wacky, which it does from time to time, mostly due to jamming. You get a bunch of Army troops out somewhere in the West who are maneuvering for practice, and they put on their GPS jammers, and the civil aircraft in the region just go wacko. So it's nice to have a backup means of navigation that won't fly you right through a mountain. So anyway, a little bit of background there about why radar didn't help at Pearl Harbor, how it could have, but that even with World War II, using CW, which is a wonderful system, but it's slow, there's one message that was sent through. Before they coded it, the radio operators were to add a nonsense sentence at the beginning and a nonsense sentence at the end, so the enemy would not know where the cipher started. And they send that out, and there was one, and I think it involved Admiral Halsey. You can correct me if I'm wrong here. But a radio operator sent a message to the ship that Admiral Halsey was on and said, "Where are you?" That was the message that was sent. But the nonsense sentence that was put on the end, the receiving radio operator wasn't sure whether that sentence belonged with the question or not. And so the telegram that Admiral Halsey read said, "Where are you? The whole world wants to know." And that changed the course of the war slightly, because Admiral Halsey immediately abandoned his maneuvers and headed straight back to Pearl Harbor. And until the whole thing was sorted out, they lost valuable time, very valuable time on that particular day. So, they had to do better than that. That's why command and control these days is done with a variety of command centers and on board the ship they've got the fire control centers and all of these different things that have been put together, and they all communicate together by satellite, by radio, by all different kinds of means, so you don't have just one comm link that can be cut that would keep the other people out, and so on. They had a similar problem, but it's kind of interesting, in early part of Vietnam. Everybody thought North Vietnam was going to start just a World War II style battle against South Vietnam, and they attacked a Navy ship, a U.S. Navy ship. And that's what tipped over the Gulf of Tonkin resolution in Congress. Well, significant academic study since then has shown that that attack was an accident, that they did not intend to attack the American cruiser. They blew it. And of course that absolutely totally changed history. But they had radars on the ship. And near Hanoi, there's kind of a harbor like this, they'd see a lot of activity in a certain area, and they thought, every time they saw that the North Vietnamese fleet was sailing out toward these Navy boats. It turned out that what they were seeing on the radar was birds, because they saw it about the same time every day. The birds took off for their evening hunting or whatever they did. And it was birds, but at the time they didn't know. They weren't as well acquainted with radar as they should have been. Anyway, interesting little stories from the history of, since we're all radio operators, we're all involved in this. And now on the civilian side, they've come up with a command and control system run by FEMA. And they have published a series of publications on how to do this. And this is how we get the Incident Command Center. This is at the county level, and it directs responses and so on to things that go wrong. And there's ways of doing it for big fires, big floods, all of this kind of thing. And it all works its way up into the National Command Authorities, the NCA. And, so on the civilian side, they're finally catching up, 70 years later, with the lessons that were learned back then. And it's a long process. It takes the government a long time to learn anything. It takes about 10 years from a general recognition of the need until you actually had something in place. And being at war didn't seem to hurry it up much. So, strange. Interesting. Okay, history lesson for the day. All right, let's see. We've got a bunch going on here, too. Leo had a nice Independence Day, Suomi. That is, it's a Finland kind of thing. Now, Finland sits between Sweden and Russia. And during World War II, during the period of time that Hitler and Stalin were allied, they came together and agreed to partition Poland. And the Soviets would take over part of it, the Germans would take over part of it, and that was the mess that started the real fighting in World War II. In Europe, the real fighting in World War II in Asia had started many years before, about 6 years prior, in Mukden. But be that as it may, the thing was that the Russians thought, we're invading Poland, why don't we grab Finland while we're at it? The Russians are known as winter fighters. I mean, bad weather just makes their day. And so here these vaunted bad weather fighters went up to take Finland and found out that the Finnish were even better bad weather fighters. And they made a few gains, but were kicked out, basically, by a much, much, much smaller force than what the Russians had. And so the Russians said, it's not something we really need to do, so let's just go back down and see what we can do about Germany. So, and of course, the Eastern Front in World War II was one of the most bloody wars in human history. But that did assure Finland's independence. Now, Finland had to kind of compromise a few things to ensure peace with Mother Russia. And this collection of things that they did has been called the Finlandization of that particular part of the country. And the same thing happened with Estonia, Latvia, and so on. All those were actually incorporated into the USSR. So, anyway, and we got Leo. Lit blue and white candles, watched a documentary on Simo Häyhä, Finland's great sniper, and the Finnish film The Unknown Soldier, which is apparently obligatory on that day. So congratulations to you and your Finnish ancestry. I just really admire the determination of those people to stay free. Okay, same as always, got his first ham radio today and made his first call. So I'm going to assume that you just got your technician recently, you got a handheld, and either through a repeater or with a friend had your first call. And that is, I think, totally worthy of congratulations. Thank you for doing that. That step you made today separates you from the many thousands of people who take their tech test, pass it, and never get on the air. So now you're ham. You've actually used the radio on the air. So somewhere in the background, start studying for your general, then find out all about the repeaters in the area. Find a club that you can and enjoy it, and you'll have a lot of fun in ham radio. The old saying, I think, works here, that you're going to get out of it as much as you put into it. And good luck to you. Good luck. Same as always, takes his test for general tomorrow. Congratulations. I'm very happy for you and hope that you get your general. And we need to get you on HF. My advice is get your tech, then get your general. Then get set up for HF, get on the air, learn HF, learn how it works a little DX, works a little contesting, goes to field day a couple times, and then about 2 years after you pass your general, take your extra, because it will mean so much more to you if you do it that way. And, good test takers are going to just walk all over it, but what have they achieved? But if you have put some time into getting on the radio, you really will know what it means. Leo says he's rather surprised that Häyhä's exploits didn't come to the fore while he was in the Marines, who stressed marksmanship. Well, he was a sniper. I have a nephew-in-law who was a sniper in the Marines, and during the one of the Gulf Wars, I think probably the first one, he was a sniper, and the sniper's nest may or may not have included some recently deceased members of the opposing armed forces. And it was really hard on him. And when he came home and married my niece, she would whine about the washing machine being broken. And he wasn't having any part of it. His response was basically, be very grateful that you actually have a washing machine. Very few people on this earth do. And he just, he'd seen the big picture, and he just wasn't putting up with any trivial whining by somebody who feels entitled to a washing machine. Shoot, I didn't get my first washing machine till it was a while. It was a while to get that. When I separated from my first wife, I had 2 children and nothing. So we had to furnish a house, and it was interesting. On Saturday morning, there was an ad in the paper for a washer plus a dryer for $125. And I called the number, figuring that since I was calling about 11 in the morning, it was going to be long gone. He said, "No, you're the first person to call. I'll hold it for you." So I quickly called around and rounded up a truck and went and picked him up. And he says, "You know, it's really weird. The moment I put the phone down, I started getting calls. I think I've had 100 calls. But nobody called before you did, so I held it for you." And so that washer and dryer lasted us, 10, 15 years till they were finally replaced. As a humorous side, the dryer broke. This was after I'd married Loretta. The dryer broke. And so I did what any self-respecting ham would do. I troubleshot it, found out it was the heating element, went down to the appliance store, paid $20 for a replacement heating element, and put it in the dryer. And the dryer worked fine. Big mistake. Big mistake. She did not want the dryer fixed. She wanted a new dryer. Okay, lesson learned. Okay, anyway, here we go. Good luck to you, same as always, tomorrow. Let's see, I think you gave your call, KK7 PRZ. Very good. And Rob likes the channel. Good. Now, as far as the exploits on the sniping, I know the Marines put a lot of emphasis on it. I guess everybody does. The Army's got them too. And, you know, one bullet that hits its target is far better than 10,000 bullets that miss it by 2 feet. So, yeah, well, good. Ralph Leland, hi Dave, everyone, K4TA, Fork Union, Virginia. More power to you, same as always. Same as always, only 5 watts so far, but I'm hopeful. I am assuming, and tell me if this is the truth, that that's a handheld. As many handhelds are 5 watts. You can get 10-watt handhelds, but do you really want a 10-watt antenna right next to your head when you transmit? I'd keep it at 5. Okay, let's see. Where it happened to us here. Okay. That's a big... Trey Furt, I stopped my ARRL membership today, too expensive. I'm sorry to hear that. The membership is about the price of the tank of gas. So you got to keep things in perspective. The ARRL is so much more than a magazine. But all I can say is I would encourage you to reconsider. I know it is expensive. And if you want the hard copy QST, you got to pay even more. I actually paid for the hard copy QST just because I'm used to using it. But I ended up reading it online first. So, yeah. Let's see. Harry, hello Dave and fellow Augies. AC3EK here with 43 degrees, 65% humidity. Don't let me forget, we've got to give away a radio tonight. Okay, happy holidays from Chuck Schreiber to Dave and all and 5 KVO. Hill Country, South Texas, 66 degrees. Hope all is going well for you, Dave. Well, the nasty little thing here is getting much smaller. So this coming Tuesday, I think it is, I go in and hopefully they'll make some teeth for me. Right now I am a toothless old man, literally. So let's see. Victor Kilo 7 Delta Alpha Zulu in Hobart, Tasmania, Australia. 25C, beautiful day. I guess it would be. It's getting close to summer for you guys. And Tasmania, as I understand it, is a lot more vegetated than the mainland. And I hear it's a beautiful place. Life and Death, happy Pearl Harbor Day. Leo, is that a bruise, Dave? Yes, it is. That's from 2 teeth being removed up here. Did I get in a fight with Mike Tyson? No, I would have been amputated right about there if that'd been Mike Tyson. KD2WLN, hello, Augies. 30-meter FT8 is really popping right now. Great. Will 609, hello from Sydney, Australia. The temp outside is 99.5 Fahrenheit. From Ross, VK2YIO. That's a bit on the warm side. Here where we live at 7,000 feet, it's rare to get above 90. I've never seen it 100 here, but this past year got well into the 90s a number of times. But you go down valley, and it can quite easily get over 100. Although, you know, I have seen it over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in Los Angeles in January. The weather is just so unpredictable there. I was very thankful our car had air conditioning, which was on full blast. Okay, let's see. Sydney, Australia. Rob Q, 68 in LA with smog and crime. Yeah, I grew up there. I remember when the smog was so bad that my throat would be sore. I'd have tears streaming out of my eyes. And looking across the street, it looked like the street light was in fog. It wasn't, it was smog. And then they finally started doing something about it. And now, if the smog ever got as bad as it did when I was a kid, they'd declare a stage 3 smog alert and shut the city down. Back then they didn't care. So I've often asked the pulmonologists that I've seen if the fact that I grew up in that 1950s LA smog might have anything to do with my lung issues. And maybe it did, I don't know. But yeah, I grew up back when LA was very laid back. Today, that's long gone. The Los Angeles of my youth no longer exists. And things have changed. A lot of things have changed. So, let's see. Eric Sund. Hello, Dave. Glad to see you. Gorgeous here. Was 50 here in Hastings, and then Montana. Oh, that's MT. Amen. Minnesota. I may have that wrong. There's so many M's, I can't keep track of it. Let's see. Fernando Gabriel Antonini says, hello, hola, a todos como están. Not exactly sure about that. Saludos desde la Argentina. Acá son las 22:40 p.m. Well, that was best wishes kind of thing. And let's just take that copy and come up here into the screen and translate late.google.com. just pop that in there. And hello everyone, how are you? Greetings from Argentina. And it is 10:40 p.m. there, 22:40 p.m. Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Google Translate. That's cool. Okay, here we go. Trying to click somewhere. There we go. I wonder if anyone has informed you what is happening with our ham licensing in Australia. I have not. Life and Death. Dave read the classic. At dawn we slept. Japan screwed up Pearl Harbor. We could have lost the war if they rearmed and destroyed the Pacific fuel supplies. Yes, but you've got to understand Japan's strategic intent. Japan's strategic intent on that day was to warn the U.S. away from entering the Pacific War. And so they went in and dealt us a little bit of a blow. Granted, they left the fuel farms alone. They left a lot of the aircraft alone. They left a lot of the ships alone. They were primarily going after the battleships. And the aircraft carriers were out at sea on exercises. They could easily have found out where they were and done the same thing. Yes, they did not give us the killer blow, but they were not intending to give us the killer blow. We were supposed to go away from Pearl Harbor with our tail between our legs, saying, okay, fine. You see, we had just stopped shipments to Japan of oil and scrap metal. Remember, Japan has no natural resources. Everything comes into that country by sea. And they were getting scrap metal from the U.S. to make all those airplanes and ships, and getting it from other places too. And we were selling them fuel and so on. And so we stopped that one day in a fit of diplomatic pique. And they came back to punish us so that we would resume sales. Boy, did they ever miscalculate. They woke the sleeping giant. Their fate was sealed from day one. The only reason it took so long in the Pacific was the same reason as in Germany. All the troops had orders to fight to the last man. Germany, if it had been wise, would have surrendered to the Allies after Stalingrad. They would have said, sorry, very sorry, very sorry. Can we talk here a little bit? But they didn't do that. They threw tens of thousands of soldiers' lives at objectives they couldn't possibly take, because the Russians were out fighting them. And when the Russians crossed the German border in the east, I mean, it was clear to anybody with a brain that the war was ending very, very badly for Germany. A lot of the higher-ranking Nazis headed west so that they could surrender to the American forces. That's what they wanted, the American forces. They figured they'd be best treated there. A lot of people went that way. There was a German submarine that was carrying atomic material to Japan, and it was somewhere in the Indian Ocean when the war ended. There were two Japanese on board from the military who were coordinating the transfer. They both knew what this meant, so they committed hara-kiri, because the Germans were going to have to surrender to an Allied, any Allied vehicle. Well, what the Germans did, this submarine, it's very interesting. It went way back out into the Atlantic in search of an American vessel. And they found an American vessel and a Canadian vessel going like this. And so they went under the Canadian vessel and came up on the other side of the American ship and surrendered to the Americans so that they could get the best deal. And, you know, I mean, it was unconditional surrender, but basically the sub was told to follow them, and they took them into a harbor and took everybody off and found the fissile material, the uranium. Uranium was extremely scarce in the United States. And some of that uranium found its way into the bomb that blew up Hiroshima. So they were giving it to the Japanese, and they got it in the end. So that's a horrible thing to say, but there. It's interesting little stories, all kinds of them. Lefty says we had a beautiful day here in Davenport, Iowa, sunny, 50 degrees. Warren Richards, I wonder if anyone... Oh, do tell what's going on in Australia. Life and death at dawn, we slept. Yeah, the Germans could have done a number of things differently. And, you know, Hitler would be an extremely old man, but they'd still be there. And, I mean, there were lots of points in the war where they made different tactical decisions. The Germans were very good at tactical retreats. They would pull their forces back, and of course the enemy would come in, and then the Germans would do a pincer around them. But Hitler outlawed that. He said that they needed to fight to the last man and never give up an inch, which is really stupid. The other thing that might have changed the outcome of the war is there were a few, more than one, plots to assassinate Hitler, none of which succeeded. One came pretty doggone close. If one of those had succeeded, I mean, it would have created chaos in the high command, because Hitler was the one force who held everything together. Hitler didn't really delegate very well, and he would often, his commanders would have conflicting tasking. He might task two different people to do the same thing. And this was a way of keeping his staff off balance. Hitler also did not have a centralized intelligence agency. All the intelligence was integrated or fused, in the parlance, in his head. Which meant that very often the right hand had no clue what the left hand was doing. That was fixed in the U.S. with the, I forget the name of it, but there was an organization. But still, during the war, the Army and the Navy fought like tigers. I mean, they even got down to the point of when the Japanese purple intercepts came in, the Army would do them on a Monday, the Navy would do them on a Tuesday, and they just swapped back and forth. I mean, it was that bad. It was that bad. Which is one reason why we lost the Pueblo. We never did fix it. The war ended before we ever fixed that. So, okay. I am blathering on. Okay, the Japanese paid dearly. Oh, yes. Trey spent 2 years in Okinawa and enjoyed it there. Or caught the carriers. Yeah, the carriers were south of Honolulu, a couple 100 miles, where they were doing maneuvers in the open ocean. And it was the carriers that won the war for two reasons. One, we lost the battleships, okay. And two, it turned out that the capital ship, the ship that did the most harm to the enemy in World War II, was the carrier. And, you know, Midway, the Battle of Midway, I think it was, the Japanese carriers and the American carriers couldn't even see each other. and they fought. And we lost one carrier, and the Japanese lost more than one. I can't remember how many it was, but it was a terrible blow to the Japanese that allowed us to spring westward and start our island hopping routine toward the home islands. Okay, let's see. Hello from the sunniest city in the U.S., Yuma, Arizona today. Put up my mast with 3 antennas, 25 feet tall. Can't wait to get started. From KK7DTF. Well, that sounds like a new call. So congratulations, and I am really delighted that you're putting stuff up in the air. Now, a word to the wise, Hugo. Persevere. I can guarantee you it won't work the first time, maybe even the first 10 times, but you will get there. The easiest way to have a conversation on the air is to call a friend who's a ham and then get on the air together. And I can't tell you what that will do to build your confidence, to get you used to using your microphone and stuff like that. And, if your friend says, I can hardly hear you, it may be, and I've seen this happen, people hold their mic out here. And, of course, the volume of the sound goes down as the square of the distance away from the mouth. So you need to keep it up close. Not right on it because it sounds like this, but within an inch or two. I often speak into the side of the microphone that way. Okay, let's see. Lefty spent 2 years in Japan in Sapporo, in the best days of my life. There's a lot of good things going on in Japan. And, they're coming to grips with the problem that they have of their population peaking. What a lot of people said 40, 50 years ago was the world's overpopulated, we've got to stop this. Well, they were wrong because people stopped having babies. China right now is desperate to recover from its one-child policy. Desperate because their population is aging so fast and there aren't young people. And what they found is the young people who were created, who did become only children, have now gone into industry with one of these high-quality technical degrees, and they're not the least bit interested in getting married and having children. They have the same problem like in Estonia, which is losing population, in Germany, which is losing population, and in the United States, it's going to get there pretty quickly. So the moral of the story is that if you look at the big, big picture of life, when you take everything else away, what remains is family. And when you're 65 years old and you walk out the door of the company with your gold watch, they've already forgotten you by the time you get to the parking lot. What you do in life, how much paper you push or whatever it may, has no determining outcome on your happiness. So, family, family, family. You've got to figure out how to do it. And there are a lot of people in the U.S. today who just don't want to get married. And they don't want to have children. And then they wonder where the children are. Well, there aren't any. I will, in fairness, point out that in the United States, this is largely a phenomenon among white people. Black people, Hispanic people, American Indian, you name it. They're blowing past us. They'll have 5, 6 children in the family. And we jump up and down and celebrate 1. The replacement ratio is like 2.2. And so what we're going to see is a very great change It's already happening in Germany. You know what they did? They've been coming up with all kinds of tax incentives and everything to have children. Finally, they did it the old-fashioned way. They had the Syrian refugee crisis, and they pulled 1 million refugees into Germany, compared to the U.S.'s like 25,000 or something. 1 million. And so you hear stories about this, that, and the other, things going on and so on. But guess who's showing up for work every day? That 23-year-old Syrian, rather than that 57-year-old German. And that's how classically these kinds of problems are solved. But how do you do that with China, which is 1.2 billion people, give or take a few 100 million? Where do the immigrants come from? They are the immigrants. Anyway. This is the secret reason, I'll tell you, why the U.S. is letting so many migrants into the United States. It's the secret reason, because they won't tell you that. But we're desperate for young people in the country. And we don't care where they come from, as long as they come. So, that's the secret reason. Now, you can argue all you want about immigration restrictions, the stupid replacement theory, all of this kind of stuff like that. But we are desperate for young people in their 20s. We're desperate. We don't care if they speak English or not. When your ancestors came over from Europe, they didn't speak English either. Oh, and there were, over the history of the United States, the anti-immigrant crowd has tried to keep out Italians, Irish, even the French. They wanted people from Northern Europe who were Protestant and had the Protestant work ethic. But they got a bunch of Italians, and they formed their own community. So anyway, let's see. Let's keep getting back to what you have to say, because that's the important stuff here. Okay, I have an MFJ 2012 hanging out there. It does real well. Love it. However, I want to participate on 80 meters. Dave, would you add a monoband 80-meter dipole or replace the MFJ 2012 with one that includes 80? Here is what I suggest you do. Go to myantennas.com and look for their 80 through 10 end-fed half-wave. I tested it. It's about 100 and, well, no, it's a little bit more than that. Let's just go look, shall we? Okay, myantennas.com. Oh my, come on, you can go faster than that. Try that enter again. Maybe their site isn't, here it is. Okay, antennas. Let's see, balance on antennas. End-fed half-wave, multi-band. Okay, here's the 80 through 10, $250. Here's a 40 through 10 for less. By the way, the ununs for these are the same, whether you do it 80 or 40. Get one of these, and that'll cover 80 through 10, all the bands except 60 meters, which nobody uses anyway. And it'll even do a credible job on 30. But I tested that. I did a video about it, and it worked exactly as advertised. I put it up in a inverted V configuration, which puts the feed point down. Let me get that normal view back up here. Where is my cursor? There it is. Okay, I put it up in an inverted V, And of course the feed was way down here. So it just went up and down like that. And man, does that thing perform. Now, it only does part of 80 meters. So they have this one down here for some reason more expensive, and I don't know why, because there's very little difference between these two. But you can get it so that it's in the voice part of the band. If it's 80 meters down at the bottom part of the band, you can do FT8 with it, okay? Nothing covers all of 80 meters. I know lots of people like to think that the big cage antennas do, and they move closer, but you really almost need to decide which end of the band you want to work on. If you're going to do FT8, that 80 through 10 is the one to get. Now what you will do is you will tune it for FT8 basically, and then it falls in on all the other bands. And it is not a perfect antenna. The SWR is not 1-to-1. Sometimes it's not even 2-to-1. But it's, I found, to be always less than 3-to-1. And so the tuner in your modern radio will just tip that thing up just fine. And it radiates as well as any dipole, because it is a dipole. Remember what I've said many times. A dipole is a dipole is a dipole. Okay, let's go back to live streaming. Okay, I hope you got all that. One of the problems the Japanese had with their carriers that the Americans solved pretty quickly, which is surprising given the mindset of the American military back then. But you have to remember, aircraft carriers were new. This was a new form of warfare that the radical visionaries were pushing. And so the commanders of the battleships were the old guard. The commanders of the aircraft carriers were the new guard. And they solved this problem that the Japanese carriers had, and had through much of the war. They could either launch aircraft, or they could recover them, but not at the same time. So American carriers now you can launch while you're recovering aircraft all the time. It can be a constant tempo, 24 hours a day. You're pushing people out there. So that was one of the problems the Japanese carriers had, was they had only one runway on the deck. So, okay, Eric, I hope that answers your question as a good possibility. If you want to put up an 80-meter dipole, fine. And then you can tune it for the part of the band that you like. Chris, K0BLU, says, hello from St. Cloud, Minnesota, where it's clear in 43. Loran. Oh, let me see if I can remember what the initials stand for. Long range. It's a radio system that broadcasts on low frequencies. And by low frequency, I mean LF. So this would be like 150 megahertz. No, 150 kilohertz. And they were big, tall stations. And they had extraordinarily accurate clocks for the time. And the different stations were totally, absolutely synced with each other, time-wise. So in your aircraft or on board a ship, you would see a curve. The curve would cover all the possible positions you could be at that would have the same different time of arrival between the two signals. The first signal would come in, then the second right behind it. So that was a time difference of arrival. Well, you could be anywhere on a hyperbola and have that same time of arrival. So then you went, click, switch to another station two stations, and look at the time difference arrival of those, that would give you a different hyperbola. Where the hyperbolas crossed was where you were. And they used Loran, for a long time. There's been some talk about bringing it back because it's not dependent on satellites. The Loran would give you about a 1 mile error. Now, if you're a ship at sea, that's pretty doggone good. And you could always supplement this with a star sighting or whatever. But Loran worked in every weather. It also worked in aircraft. Aircraft traveled so fast that a 1 mile error wasn't bad. Now, 1 mile missing the airport, that's a problem. But they had homing beacons for the airports, also low-frequency beacons. And they would use a direction finder to find that beacon, and they used, the direction finders had a cardioid pattern, which meant a very broad front with an extremely narrow, deep null on the other side. And that's the side they pointed at the beacon. So you could get your aircraft back that way. And there were all kinds of other things that they did so you could tell where you were, what height to be at. But that's Loran. And long range aid to navigation. I think that's it. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, let's see. Many mistakes, yes. My wife is in the middle of the Izu Peninsula. She's really broadened my horizons even more than the Marines did. Well, very good. Very good. Chris Goodman, K0BLU, you want slow. All right, Dave from James McDonough, watching from England. Treyford, FEMA, everybody's friend. It can be when they do things right. FEMA was a great big exercise in response to 9/11, where they took all of the domestic response agencies and put them under FEMA. And that became part of the Department of Homeland Security. Somehow the Coast Guard ended up in there, good grief. But they have put together this mishmash of people with vastly different cultures. And FEMA is still stumbling over that. You know, they talk about FEMA going in to help with major disasters, and they do. But their mission is to go in there long enough for the state to take control, and then they're out and off for the next disaster. So it's, oh man, you could write all kinds of storybooks about FEMA. I worked with FEMA for quite a while as an IBMer. Interestingly, FEMA runs the nation's flood hazard mapping program. If you've ever bought a new house, you have to go through the exercise of determining whether you need flood insurance. If you need it and do not get it, no one will grant you a mortgage. Also, if your house does flood and it happens like twice, they say, by the way, we're moving you, whether you want it or not, because why should the taxpayer keep paying for people to rebuild buildings in areas that get flooded over and over and over? They had quite a to-do, and I don't know if this has been sorted yet, in New Orleans. A lot of the black neighborhoods were actually below sea level. The reason they were below sea level is because the oil companies had pumped all the oil out from underneath them, causing the ground to sink. So they put these big levees along the Mississippi, and they had all these pumping stations to pump water into the Mississippi to keep these places dry. Well, when Katrina hit, of course, the pumps went out because there was no power for them. And these are enormous pumps. Pump a whole canal's worth of water over the dike. Plus there were some breaks in the dikes. And this whole area flooded badly. And so these people, they were community. They're community-oriented people. And they wanted to rebuild. And it was a real contest between those who wanted to rebuild and those who said it is absolutely, obviously, blatantly stupid to rebuild in a place that's going to flood under 10 feet of water every time we get a hurricane. So the compromise was you can rebuild if you put your house on about 14 feet worth of stilts. And so it is, as far as I understand, still an issue down there. Still an issue. Now, one of the problems they had in New Orleans is a lot of other people, they fled New Orleans as Katrina came, and they never went home because it took so long to recover that these people ended up settling where they evacuated to. They went to a friend's house in Austin and ended up renting an apartment and getting a job. And what's the point of going home to something that's a big soggy mess? So it really changed the demographics in New Orleans. Interesting, all these fun little things that go on just underneath the headlines. Okay. Continuity of government is a big deal in certain quarters. And I think you've got the wrong department. I mean, DOD is really the one responsible for continuity of government. And I mean, there is a whole federal center in Denver that was originally designed to be a place to evacuate the federal government to. There's even a building there where Congress can meet. As time has gone on and the missiles got better, they kind of, it's still there. It's still there, just nobody uses it. They do have a bunch of federal agencies occupying the buildings. But continuity of government is really kind of a DOD thing. And the point of, if you read this EMA documentation, by the way, there's some courses on emergency management, which you can take online. They cost you like $100, but you can take them online. And then you are certificated so that you can go down to your local county level emergency action center and participate and bring all the hams in so that the hams can help them with their communication. FEMA, or Department of Homeland Security, has made it clear, I should say DHS, this is not FEMA, said to counties, it's really important that you incorporate ham radio into your planning, because regardless of all the advancements, it's always the hams who can communicate first. So John, I think, FEMA has roles in that, but continuity of government, look it up under that term, continuity of government. And you'll find there's a lot of effort put into this. One of them is the National Communication System, which is a set of minimalist communications, mostly on HF, that allow key government command and control facilities to talk if there's nothing else. That's an NCS, a National Communication System. Then you build out from there. During the height of the Cold War, the U.S. government paid AT&T millions of dollars, billions in today's terms, to harden their system. Because back then it was all microwave towers, and they wanted to harden that If you go to Cheyenne Mountain, there's a couple little cupolas carved in the mountain way up high where they have microwave towers looking out. And they're back inside so they won't get hit by a blast, and you can still have that communications path. Of course, all that's changed now. It's all fiber optic. So, let's see. Smash that thumbs up, everybody. Yes, please. Trey is leaving, not in history lesson mode. Okay, well, thank you. Good to have you. And Chris Goodman, K0BLU, the Olympic biathlon, which involves cross-country skiing and rifle shooting, is a tribute to Finland and Norway during World War II. Well, I did not know that. Thank you very much for telling me. I appreciate that. Same as always, said earlier, he's taking his general test tomorrow. We wish you the best on that and look forward to next week, you telling us how that went. Gustafsson, after the greater and lesser wrath, the Finns knew what they were in for if they failed. Yes. Same as always, thanks for the advice. Max, I'm in relatively new ham, got my general. Good for you. I've joined the local ARES, which uses 2 meter. The state uses 80 meters. Why would they choose 80? Technical question. The answer is something called NVIS, near vertical incidence skywave propagation. That is something that happens on 40, 80, and can happen on 60, and even 160. Low frequencies. The idea is you put up an antenna, like a dipole at 25 feet, that will mostly transmit up over your head. And then when the band is open, and usually one of 80, 40, or whatever is open, you will be able to communicate with anybody in about a 500-mile radius. 500 might be pushing it a bit, 400. For example, Denver, which is a 6-hour drive to get to Denver, okay? But it's 196 miles as the crow flies, if the crow doesn't freeze to death going over the Rockies. But that signal goes up near vertical incidence skywave, and it bounces back down to everybody in that radius. That's why 80 meters. And sometimes 40 works better in the daytime, 80 at night. Sometimes when the sunspot cycle is really low, you end up having to go to 160. But that's why they do that. It's because of the near vertical incidence skywave propagation. It was interesting, the military used that a lot in Vietnam. They found that their mobile communications trucks had vertical antennas on the back. And so they would take the tip of that antenna and tie it down to a tree so it was kind of horizontal, because this works with horizontal polarization. Okay, the thing would transmit up and they could talk anywhere in Vietnam they wanted to. But if you try the vertical, then they're trying to find a frequency where it'll, you know, do the usual kinds of things. Okay, let's see. So I hope that answers why 80. Copy that, Dido. Ryan, my wife's grandmother said the same thing about her ham husband, that she never got anything new or nice because he kept fixing everything. Oh, yes. Oh, I don't think my wife's forgiven me yet. Glenn Martin, my wife is grateful when I get the dryer repaired. Good. Surprise her one day. Buy her a new one. No, that's not a good idea. Surprise her one day. Take her down to Home Depot or the appliance store and let her buy a new one. Because no matter what you do, it doesn't matter which dryer you pick, it's the wrong one. Okay, so let's see. I'm way behind here. Hi, Dave. Robert Shaw. Passed my amateur extra last year, but never bought any radio equipment, no help in my area. Robert, I have over 1,000 videos on my channel. Search through them. I want to refer you to a web page, and the web page is D as in Delta, Casler, CASLER.com / and then the word reference. And it will give you a list of all the equipment that you need to set up a functioning general station. And by functioning, I mean functioning just fine. And it's got everything listed. It used to be people would ask me, what radio should I buy? And I'd say, well, you know, it's personal choice. I finally got tired of that, and I said, buy the ICOM 7300. Be done with it. Well, now the Yaesu 710 is another nice option, but I think the ICOM's a little easier to use. I think it might be a couple hundred more expensive. So go either way with that. But it will tell you everything down to the coax, the part number, everything, the power supply, the coax cable, the antenna, and I start you out with a simple antenna from MFJ, less than $100, that will get you on 40, 20, 10, and 6. Okay, so it's not the world's most perfect antenna, but it's cheap. That'll probably be the first thing you replace. And I'm on my 1, 2, 3, 4th, 5th HF radio now as my main station. What I did was, when I did that, I took my nice mid-range Yaesu, put it up on the shelf, and bought an ICOM 7300. So my station is the reference station. So I can answer questions about it and so on. So, okay, Robert, start watching the videos. Get your station put up. And there's videos up there on everything. If you have a question that you can't find an answer to, write to me at AskDave, all one word, AskDave at ARRL.org. Not .net, but .org. That's a regular staff ARRL address, because I write the Ask Dave column in QSD. And a lot of times when I get questions, I'll do one of 3 things. Well, 4 things. One, if I can't figure out the question, I'll ask for clarifications. Photographs really help. If you're making something, take a photograph of it. Second, I'll answer the email directly if it's short. Second, I'll save it and use it for an Ask Dave column. Or, lastly, I'll make one of my own videos about it. And my assistant will notify you when that video goes up. Now, please understand I'm months behind on questions. But if it's a simple question, I'll try and answer it directly, as I did earlier today with several. So, we're not going to leave you in the dark, but it will require that you persevere. So try the reference, start budgeting, start doing the best you can to put things up, and so on. And you'll get to the point where you pick up a little knowledge, and you build on that, and then one day you have your first HF QSO, and the world changes. Okay, so. Life and death. Dave, I was recently told the Marines spend 2 full weeks on rifle training and basic. It is still every Marine is still a rifleman first. Even the cooks and clerks. Yes, I've heard that. I even had training in Air Force ROTC. I'd never fired a gun in my life. And they handed me an F-16 or an M16 and said, qualify. And I did. And then they handed me a Colt 45. Oof, scary thing, heavy. And they said, qualify. And I did. I never fired a weapon before, and really not much since. But I qualified. Of course, in the Air Force, that's just a little tick box in the corner. It's not the same as the Marines. Okay, I got the Baofeng GT3R handheld with no spurious submissions. Very good. Nice radio. Alan Failer, hello all from Allen, Ohio. Best wishes from KB8RXY. Ken Wheeler, good evening watching from Lehigh, Utah. I've actually been there. I think I had a flat tire repaired there one time. My kids and I were on a vacation, and it was the Honda. And we got off the freeway, changed the tire, went into town, and I looked for the grubbiest, dirtiest service station or automobile repair place that I could find. The ugliest one where there was trash out front and 16 vehicles all parked helter-skelter. And I went in there and I said, I need this flat fixed. And they said, okay. Took the tire completely apart, cleaned everything up, put a proper patch inside. Not some little sticky thingy they put in, but a proper patch. Put it all back together, and we got that back in the car in the original position. And I said, how much? He says, oh, don't worry about it. That's why I remember Lehigh, Utah. They were very, very nice to me. And the reason I picked the ugliest shop I could find was because they didn't have any corporate masters telling them what they had to do or how they had to do it. They did it the way they thought was best. I really liked it. Okay, watching from Lehigh. Cusseta, Georgia. Happy and Merry Christmas to you and family. WWII. Good evening, watching in Wichita, Kansas, 57 degrees. Bill Myers, hello, David All Augies. What antennas do you like for long-distance HF? A vertical. I like a vertical. Now, I've got a hex beam. The problem with the hex beam is that it sends most of its energy into a quadrant. And I've got a little rotator here. So if there's a DX station, I got to fiddle with the rotator and getting it pointed in the right way to where they will have even a possibility of hearing me. It's better to do it on the vertical because, bam, you're right there. So, yeah, a long distance, a vertical. Jim Kennedy says a TA-53 Mosley. Mosley made some mighty sturdy antennas. Tough as a tank, yes. We'll excuse you this time. Next time you need a note from your mother. Okay. Hello, Dave from another Dave, K7DAA in Utah. I agree with you about ARRL membership. Not a huge fan. But they are our only representation to the SEC and the feds. Absolutely true. And they really do try hard. Sometimes I get a little peeved at them when I write them an email asking them, please call me. And they don't. They just write an email back. And it says, this is going to take days. You know, just pick up the phone. We'll have it settled in a minute. Double stacked Yagi. Okay. Same as always. Hold your horses. Keep your money in the bank. Wait until you have some more experience. Okay? Because you got the same problem with double stacked Yagis. Is the very, very narrow beam width. And it can be very hard to find the right people to talk to. Wait until you really start to develop an intuition for HF. And then go after those double stacked Yagis on a tower. Big tower, 50 feet. Jim says, best wishes to all. Same as always, I tried a chameleon early on, but it was non-resonant. Turned out it requires the use from the antenna tuner. Ultimately went with the Buddy Pole hex beam, and it rocks. Yeah, all the hex beams are great. By the way, Buddy Pole was not at Pacificon this year. They were there the year before, but not this year. 4 Japanese Imperial Navy carriers were lost at Midway. Cool. Bottom of the ocean's the right place for them. Okay. Thinking of making a custom antenna from a copper pipe. You can do that. Now, if you're going to have your general upgrade tomorrow, you can start thinking about antennas. And one of the things that was mentioned in a comment earlier about resonance is critically important with any antenna. Okay. Don't want to marry because I don't want to lose half of everything I've worked for. I went through that. Nice, or let's see, you're welcome, same. Whoops. Oh, we've had some people putting in chat revenue. I've got 5 minutes left and I haven't done the most important thing. We did not have a live stream last month because I was recovering from having my head ripped off in the dental office. So I did send out a picture. Okay, so we need to give away a radio. This is a Redivis radio. I recently did a review of it. It's a nice little radio. For some strange reason, they sent me 6 of them. So this will be the 3rd one of them I'm giving away. I gave away 2 at the Ham Radio Club Christmas dinner, and I'm going to keep one for myself because it is such a nice radio. It's FM only. It's not DMR. Okay, here are all the things stacked. I'm just going to kind of ruffle them up a little bit. I opened every envelope just to make sure that it really was just an entry and wasn't a question or something like that. Okay. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to stick the finger in here and we're going to pull out the one that's on the bottom, which happens to be W9GRX. Okay, W9GRX, congratulations. You're the proud owner of a brand new Redivis handheld. Nice little handheld. It says this is for the November giveaway from Jim. He's got his phone number in there as I questioned, and it's his QSL card. And I want you to notice the forever stamp on here. This is not the first class forever stamp. This is the postcard forever stamp, which is considerably less expensive. Stamps are getting expensive these days, but buy some forever stamps. Send your QSL cards out this way as postcards and put a forever stamp on them like that. I've got a few postcard here. This is Jim Miller in Prescott Valley, Arizona. I've been there. And Yavapai County, DM34TN. And boy, he shows cubicle quad there. I'm going to do I just got a check from a company that wants to sponsor one of my videos. And so I'm going to do a video about cubicle quads because they make them. I had never heard of this company before, but I put out in the latest QSD that I did not know of any commercial companies making cubicle quads. Well, I got feedback. So I got in touch with them, they got in touch with me, and we're going to do a video about cubicle quads in general. And this one company, Cubex Antennas, is going to sponsor that video. Okay, so Jim, Prescott Valley. Prescott is a really cool place. I mean, we stayed there overnight in one of the campgrounds, and it was just cool. I really liked it. We made the mistake of coming in from the west through a very snaky road through the mountains. We hardly get up to 15 miles an hour. Anyway, this will probably go in the mail tomorrow. Now, the rest of these go in the shred pile. I do not keep any information. Now, like I said, I did open every envelope just to make sure that there were no questions or anything like that inside. Okay, and the address, you need to send a QSL card, a postcard, or a single piece of paper in an envelope. Send it to Dave Casler, P.O. Box 98, Ridgeway, Colorado, 81432. Okay, and on it include your shipping address, and your phone number, and your call sign. The call sign is very important. Got to be ham to get this. Okay, so that'll go out in the mail tomorrow. Now let's through. Optical Man Jeff added $15. Says, thanks, Dave, for all you do. Appreciate it. Chris Goodman. K0BLU, $10. Says, I just got a Yaesu FT818ND transceiver. May I use it with an amplifier to increase the signal power from 6 watts to 40 to 100? The answer with the Yaesu is yes. You can. Make sure it's a linear amplifier and not just an FM only amplifier. You may find that it's about as expensive as just buying a 100-watt radio. But yes, you can. Now, with the Chinese radios, like the little G90 and stuff like that, their signals are such ragged quality that using an amplifier with them will cause your signal to be non-compliant. But the Japanese radios are much better. Okay, and Leo Gustafsson adds $20 to the chat revenue. Says, thanks for the history and radio chat. It is Pearl Harbor Day, so this is a day for those of us who were born after Pearl Harbor. The same thing happened on December 8th that happened right after 9/11, that the lines at the recruiting stations got very long. In 1942, my father was one of them. He was 17. He got a permission slip signed by his father, which was a story in itself, to be able to join the Navy at 17. And he fought in the Pacific. One of the islands he visited was the island of Leyte in the Philippines. He was on the Tacloban side. When I was a missionary there, I was on the Ormoc side. So we at least got to the same landmass. We never actually quite crossed paths. But he was part of all that Pacific stuff that went through there. He was the guy on the bridge that read the flags on the other ships. He would take his turns at the helm and all of that. I'm just so doggone proud of my father. He's gone now, has been for some years. So, Leo, thank you for that. Says thanks for the history and radio chat. Okay, so we are over time. Oh my goodness. Thank you. If anybody else would like to throw $1 or $2 in the chat revenue, it's still open. And you do that by going down to the chat, picking the money button. And then I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Doug Dry, I put 2 stamps on like I do every month so I could win. Would try 3 stamps, but I pulled your name out once, I think. Anyway, oh no, you're the one who sent me the phone. That's this beautiful dial phone here. It shows up in a lot of the Ask Dave videos. And I love that thing. It's just so cool. Takes me back to my childhood. Our phone number was area code 213-242-5967, I think it was. And I had that memorized because my parents made me memorize that phone number in case I ever got someplace I shouldn't be. I had that phone number. Thank you all very much. Happy holidays to everyone. We've had Thanksgiving, and now we're working our way toward Christmas. And there are the Jewish Hanukkah, which is a celebration of light. And there's the New Year coming up, the Chinese New Year for that matter. And lots of things going on. This thing they call Kwanzaa that I don't understand. If somebody has a good explanation of that, email it to me. And many other things happen at this time of the year. It's a good way to hold off psychologically falling into winter. Of course, after New Year's, boom, we're in winter. Got Valentine's Day, but Oh well. Okay, so thank you all very much. And until we next meet, 73.